Hey guys, Dotarian here, back with another Last Epoch video. So today we're going to be talking about a dev blog that was released earlier today, going through a teaser of some Shaman skills coming to the Last Epoch 1.0 launch. Now the teaser that they've gone through is on two particular skills, Gathering Storm and Tempest Strike. So here they mentioned that back in November, they talked about some of the changes that were coming with the 1.0 release. When covering Tempest Strike, we mentioned that the change to Tempest Strike's mechanic left a gap in the Primalist class for a low-cost, spammable generator. Without further ado, and to kick off these blog posts, let's start by covering the new Primalist skill, Gathering Storm, as well as some of the new Tempest Strike features coming February 21st. So with Gathering Storm, it will become available to all Primalists at level 2, replacing Ice Thorns. So Ice Thorns were the previous skill, now Gathering Storm will be replacing that. So you can see here, it says, strike at your enemy with a mighty lightning-powered storm. When using Gathering Storm and hit at least one enemy, you gain a storm stack. Every second you expend a storm stack to cause a storm bolt to strike a nearby target. This interval is reduced by 2% for every stack you currently have. So essentially you build up stacks of storm, and when you have more of them, you have storm bolts that you can do. With higher stack counts, firing off storm bolts at greater rates, Gathering Storm is an ability that is about pressing the attack for a greater reward. By the time you reach 50 storm stacks, there is zero delay between consuming stacks to generate storm bolts, so a greater stack count is always beneficial. Gathering Storm costs 0 mana by default and inherently gains 4% damage per point of strength to the melee attack, whilst a point of attunement gains 1 spell bonus for Storm Bolt. So essentially it looks like it scales off of both melee attack and attunement to give spell damage for Storm Bolt. And you can see the attack here. You're doing the melee attack. As you're doing the melee attack, the Storm Bolts are coming down as you gain those Storm stacks. In its tree, you'll find various ways to generate, spend, and manage stacks and gain different effects from storm stacks. It's also worth noting the old references to the lightning ability in the Shaman passive tree and some of the other abilities have been changed to Storm Bolt. All instances of Storm Bolt use Gathering Storm's Storm Bolt, even when the Primal Wolves cast it, meaning these additional Storm Bolts triggers synergize very well with Gathering Storm to create a quite frenetic storm of lightning. So here they've also outlined other passives in the skill tree for Gathering Storm. So we have Frostbringer, and it looks like Frostbringer will change the damage of Storm Bolts from lightning to cold and convert shock chance to frostbite chance as well. So essentially you're getting off some good freeze and crowd control and damage over time with Frostbolt. So we can see here Winter Comes is one of the passives that you can unlock in the Gathering Storm skill tree. And then we also have range skill. So we saw up here in the top section, Gathering Storm by default is a melee skill. Now here they mentioned that you can change it to a range spell. While wielding a staff, the melee attack for Gathering Storm is replaced by a direct range cast of Storm Bolt, but Gathering Storm costs additional mana. So normally Gathering Storm costs no mana, now it costs 6 mana to cast it. And here we get an example of the Storm Bolt getting struck. And it kind of feels like the lightning skill in Diablo 4 with the werewolf for druid, so it seems like a very similar type of feel in that regard. Then we've also got dual wielding support as well. What would a skill about pressing the attack be without some dual wielding support? The two-eyed storm node grants storm stacks the ability to strike 2 enemies for the price of 1, so as long as you have 1 weapon in each hand. So when you expend a storm stack while dual wielding, you now cast storm bolts at 2 enemies, which is really good for stacking additional damage. Then we also have Whirlwind Tactics, which is another point in the skill tree, and it looks like this one will stack with minions, so it will synergize it with minions in some way. When you use a companion skill, expend storm stacks over the next 0.3 seconds. Storm bolts triggered this way deal more damage. So essentially it looks like a whole bunch of storm bolts are coming down and striking the enemy. Then we have the next skill here, Tempest Strike. So Tempest Strike has been reworked in its functionality while keeping the same theme. Tempest Strike is now a high cost combo ability which triggers a Tempest with each strike rather than a chance for a spell effect that it had previously. So in this case here we get to see what Tempest Strike does, and it looks like it's doing all 3 effects, like all 3 elemental effects. So it's a melee combo attack that cycles through a cold strike, a physical strike, and a lightning strike that triggers elemental tempest spells of the same damage type if the strikes hit at least 1 enemy. You have a cold strike, which triggers a frigid tempest, so it's a cold projectile. You've got the physical strike, which is a wind tempest, and it's that little tornado there. And then you've got the lightning strike, which will generate a lightning storm. So here we've got some passives in the skill tree that will buff or change the Tempest Strike in some way. So Druid's Call will allow you to turn Tempest Strike into a melee triggered ability while transformed. While transformed and you use any melee ability and hit at least 1 enemy, you have a chance to cast each Tempest of the matching damage type. So essentially you can use it whilst you're transformed, and this will consume mana equal to a portion of Tempest Strike's mana cost. So here this is showing you the Swarm Blade. As you're transformed, you're casting tornadoes and lightning bolts as well. Then we've got Tempest Sacrificing. In the Tempest Strikes tree, you'll find a number of nodes which allows you to sacrifice one of the Tempests in order to gain attack speed. Though do be aware, removing a Tempest does not remove the corresponding strike. You'll also find opportunities to synergize with other abilities for further spell combos, such as Ceaseless Typhoon node, which grants a chance to cast Tornado each time you trigger the Wind Tempest in the combo. So each of these, it looks like it removes one of the Tempests, but does not remove the Cold Strike from the combo, and you gain increased attack speed, and it costs less mana. So that's what's shown here. You can see the attack speed is quite fast when we take off all of the Tempests. Then you've got Totem support as well. So it will turn Tempest Strike into a Tempest Totem, which casts the 3 Tempests in sequence without the melee attack. This also converts the ability into a minion ability by changing a totem, allowing Tempest Strike to fit into other Totem and minion builds. So that's really cool. And then you've got Tempest Focus, which is, if you want to keep it simple and add more Tempests, we've got you covered. Granting any of the strikes a chance to cast one of the Tempests means you lash out more Tempests, which each strike pick a specific Tempest to focus on, or just trigger more of all of them. The choice is yours. So essentially here you have a chance to cast Wind Tempest when you attack with Lightning or Cold Tempest Strike. You also have a chance to cast Thunder Tempest when you attack with Cold or Physical Tempest Strike. And then finally you have a chance to cast the Frigid Tempest when you attack with Lightning or Physical Tempest Strike as well. So additional buffs to Tempest Strike. Essentially we'll want to see how Shaman changes in terms of these 2 skills. And bear in mind that these are changes to 2 of Shaman's abilities, in addition to, I think they've announced some passive point changes as well that they might be doing as well. So we'll have to see how powerful Shaman gets in terms of when these changes get released. But it is very exciting to get into it. Now they've mentioned here that the servers will be down 24 hours prior to launch. And then once the launch happens, hopefully the servers are all ready for the launch. So that's going to be really exciting to see. If you've enjoyed the video, drop me a like down below and subscribe to the channel. As always, have an awesome day. Bye for now.